This is the Rare But Real podcast with Audrey Broggie. Audrey is a pastor's wife, mother, and grandmother who will often be joined by her daughter and daughters-in-law as they discuss what it takes to be a woman of God in these challenging days. For years, young women have grown up with an indoctrination of what womanhood is and what it should be. Yet God still raises up real women in every generation who love Him and want to live for Him. They are rare, but they are real. And now, Audrey Broggie.
Hey, I'm so glad to be joining you again for this third in the series where I'm talking about our bodies. And I know we looked at a lot of scripture. We looked at God's purpose for our bodies. We talked about how we're just stewards. These bodies are meant to be functional. God created them. He breathed life into Adam, and then He created woman out of Adam's rib, and He had a purpose and a reason to bring them into this world, to cultivate it and keep it and fulfill the earth and rule and subdue and bear children and bring glory to Him and work together as a team. And we need bodies in which to do that. And so I hope, if this is the first one that you're listening to, I hope you'll go back and listen to the first one. I simply titled it Our Bodies, and the second one I titled it Our Bodies Belong to God. And this one I am going to try to, bring it to a summary and give some really practical application of just things that I've learned over the years. And but I had this article that I read a number of years ago, and I think it's still so applicable when we're talking about the issue of our bodies. And it was written by Dr. Paula Q, who at that time was at Johns Hopkins University. But here's what she wrote, and I thought this was very good. Many of us start putting on the pounds when life gets too busy to fit in exercise. Sure, we're busy with all the demands of work and family, but those don't necessarily get our muscles fired up and heart pumping effectively to burn lots of calories. The same time constraints often lead us to choose easy, fast food options, which are often loaded with fat and calories. Isn't it easier to grab a burger or bagel than to take the time to prepare healthier, lower calorie meals? Then there are those milestones in our lives that tend to translate into extra pounds, like pregnancy, the freshman 15, gaining 15 pounds early in college, and the slowdown in metabolism around menopause. Bottom line, day after day, calories consumed outweigh those burned, which translate into pounds on our hips and thighs. We feel pressured to lose the added pounds when we learn about the health risks associated with obesity, like heart disease and diabetes. Likely you've heard from a health professional or a family member that you ought to lose weight. Yet who among us can measure up to the unrealistic standards of body weight presented to us by the media month after month in the endless parade of ultra-thin models and celebrities that grace the covers of nearly every woman's magazine? And of course, this was written a number of years ago, but now we can add social media, we can add, everything that we consume. It's not just women's magazines anymore. Making the right diet choices may seem difficult, and sometimes we may be tempted to take shortcuts that could be unhealthy or even dangerous over the long term. We allow ourselves to get hooked by diet fads because they can often deliver a quick initial drop in weight, which of course then creates an addictive, positive feedback loop that encourages us to continue the unhealthy behaviors. You may already know which dangerous diet techniques I'm referring to, but let's run through a few. Purging, of course, that's vomiting after a meal. Starvation, laxative abuse, diuretic abuse, stimulant abuse. Why are these practices dangerous? It's all about maintaining the chemical balance within our bodies. Our blood, for example, has a perfect balance of salts such as sodium, potassium, and calcium, and these substances must all be in just the right amounts if our hearts are to pump normally and our muscles to contract. Our bodies also maintain a strict balance of acids and their chemical opposites, bases, an equilibrium that is reflected in a value called the pH. Changes in pH influences the balance of salts in the body. All of the diet techniques listed above can cause dramatic losses of potassium, stomach acid, and bicarbonate or base. One of the frightening consequences such behaviors may lead to is an irregular heart rhythm, arrhythmia, which is associated with cardiac arrest and death. Now, here are some other common problems these dieting methods acids may cause. Damage to the tooth enamel when stomach acid is forced out through the mouth during vomiting. Cramping and diarrhea due to laxative use. An inability to achieve regular bowel movements without resorting to laxatives. Jitteriness, sleep difficulties, and heart palpitations caused by some of the dieting products containing stimulants. The stimulant, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but it's fenfluramine and phentermine, was banned in the United States after it was associated with heart damage and deaths, particularly among women. The breakdown and ingestion of muscle during starvation, as the body tries to use its own substance to provide essential nutrients to the brain, thus counteracting any beneficial effects of a diet. An increasing risk of osteoporosis as long-term indulgence in such diets depletes calcium from the bones. So, for a lifetime of health and fitness, go with what's been proven to work. Follow a diet that's low in simple carbohydrates and saturated fats, and balance it with increased physical activity. It may take a few months to start seeing results, but with patience and a commitment to your overall well-being, you'll eventually get to enjoy the sustained benefits of this healthier approach over many years. Now, I read that to you, but it's basic common sense, and it's such a reminder of how God has made our bodies. Just when she's saying, as a physician, she's saying, the chemical balance. She talks about why abusing your body in these ways is so dangerous, because she says it's all about maintaining the chemical balance within our bodies. Who created that? Who made our bodies to function the way they're supposed to function? And then when she says our blood, for example, has a perfect balance of salts such as sodium, potassium, and calcium. And these substances must all be in just the right amounts of if our hearts are to pump normally and our muscles to contract. Who created our bodies to work that way? God did. When you look at the intricacies of the body, when you're just teaching your children basic bodily functions just in a normal science book that just talks how the body, talks about how the body works, just whether it's digestion, how everything works in our bodies, it's amazing. It all points to the fact that there is a creator who created us. And of course, again, even in this article, she talks about how our bodies maintain a strict balance of acids and their chemical opposites. Who did that? Who created our bodies to function that way? The Lord did. And so when we last time talked about that we're stewards of our bodies, we are supposed to take care of them, to know how they function, to know how God designed them, so that we are doing the best we can so that we can be used for His glory during our stay upon this earth. And I know sometimes that's hard, or it seems to be hard, but it's filled, it's just so much of it is just common sense. Now, I want to share a little bit about my own story in this area. I don't know, when I was a freshman in college, and it's when I really started thinking about the physical fitness side of making sure I was getting plenty of physical exercise, because, I was very active when I was growing up. I love the outdoors. We didn't watch that much television. There wasn't that much to watch. We watched some things, but when I grew up with no choice about working in the garden, working at the barn, working long and hard days in the summertime, working in the house, in the flower beds, whatever it was. It was just what we did. It was just what my parents had us do. And of course, on those times when there wasn't maybe those particular chores to do, my mom was always like, get outside and play. Get outside and play. She didn't mind if we played in the house, of course. Because it's raining or you're playing dolls or whatever. But I remember a constant thing when I was a child was get outside and play. And of course, even when I was growing up, I always cared about my body. I never really had a weight problem when I was growing up. But I began running in college because of friends. Really, it was because of a group of girlfriends and my friends on the hall. And it's because, I did put on the freshman 15. I did. And I remember it happening because, we would gather in someone's room, sometimes late at night after we've been studying, and we'd decide, oh, let's order a pizza, or oh, let's go to the, wherever it was we went. There was this it was called the circus room, but they stayed open late and they had ice cream, and we would just go get stuff like that, and we would eat and laugh and talk in a dorm room before we went to bed. And then I put on those freshmen 15 pounds, and I guess some of my friends at that time did as well. So there was one evening when one of the girls said, let's go for a run, because we'd just eaten, we'd just been stupid and ate too much food. So we went, and I remember, and it was in the evening, but it was a group of girls, and I remember that I could hardly go, and when I think back on it now, it was like maybe a quarter of a mile without being completely out of breath. And this was just a little jog. This wasn't like some intense run. But I remember knowing that thinking, wow, I am so out of shape. I can't even maintain a run for a mile. And that was my wake up call. And so then I started doing it regularly. Now those girls, we didn't do that together anymore, but that was the beginning of my thinking, I need to do this regularly. And so I did until, I could run a quarter of a mile, and then I could run half a mile without stopping. I would walk, run, and then I could run a mile without stopping, and then I could run 2 miles. And I interspersed that with jumping rope, because one of my friends was a gymnast, and she had this really quality jump rope, and she said, oh, you'd be amazed how much this will help. So, and I think maybe it was the results I saw from that regular exercise, because I saw the freshman 15 fall off, and I was glad about that. And I was also making sure I was eating healthy at that time. But it caused me, I think, to change my major from journalism. That's why when I went to UNC, I was thinking I was going to major in journalism, because I like to write, and I've written more about that in other times. But I ended up changing my major to public health education. Now, of course, for all these years, instead of using my college degree on the general public, I've just used it with my children. I always encouraged, Carl and I both, encouraged our children to get plenty of exercise, to run, work out, just to take care of their physical bodies. We've always tried to help them take care of what they were eating, pay attention to it, not be legalistic about it or always on them, but just trying to help them in that area. So for me, I've been running. I always say I don't really run, I jog. But I've been doing that. And then when my kids were little, I started doing aerobics, because that was a craze, back in the 80s, doing aerobics. And, anyway, then, I got married, and then I was pregnant with my first baby, and I ended up gaining 54 pounds with him. And then when he was 3 months old, I was surprised that most of the weight was still there. I think I just thought, okay, it's all baby weight, and it was my first time, and I don't know. I guess when you're wearing those big tent dresses, as we did back then, I know people don't really do that now when they're pregnant, but back then I did, and I guess I just didn't notice it. Maybe I should have if I'd studied my face in the mirror and saw how round it was getting, but that happens with pregnancy. I get that. But I think I thought that all that extra weight I had gained with him would just naturally fall off, especially with breastfeeding. But after 3 months, I remember he was 3 months old, and I was kind of discouraged because I couldn't fit into any of my clothes. And I remember calling the doctor's office and said to Betty, she was the woman, the nurse there, who I had just become friends with, and I really loved her. And I remember calling her and saying, Betty, I'm still fat. And she said, Audrey, get outside and push that baby in the stroller and quit eating so much. That's what she told me. Just plain and simple. She was very direct, and she just said, that's what it's going to take. She didn't have sympathy with her in her voice, but I knew her. I had gotten to know her all the 9 months that I had been pregnant, so I knew she was very caring and that she cared about me. But she just told me what I knew, but it was also what I needed to hear. So I seriously took her advice, and I got outside and I pushed that baby, and I pushed him so much and so long that by the time he was 11 months old, the weight was gone, plus some additional weight. And I found that I didn't want to eat as much. I found that my appetite kind of adjusted to that. And I don't know, at least in my experience, it really did cause my appetite to change. So I pushed that baby so much. Then as I was walking and walking faster and faster, I just started running with him in tow. Now, I didn't have a jogging stroller at the time. We had a really good stroller for the time. It was called a Perego, and it was like one of the top of the line strollers, but I ran with him in that stroller. And of course, then I got pregnant with Jordan. And at that time, I was determined that I wasn't going to gain 54 pounds. I kept a log of everything that I ate, and I mean everything. I kept a log of every mile I walked and every mile I ran. In fact, I still have that log. And with him, I gained 30 pounds, and I began pushing that baby as soon as I could. And of course, with young children, you know, you have to adjust your life. It's not the same as being single or being, or before you have children. So I would work in the times where I could get in a jog or an aerobic workout. So if it was running, I would do that when Carl was home, or I would do aerobics when the children were napping, or sometimes I would do it when they weren't napping because they thought it was great fun to jump around with me. And you know, I can still remember sometimes doing aerobics in my living room, and Jordan would be in his little bouncy seat, and Jeremy would be jumping around with me. It was really fun. I mean, we just really had a good time. And sometimes too, if they were both napping, I would just run laps around our house with the monitor on the front steps. And of course, I was just running around the house so I could run in and check on them. But still, that's what I did. And of course, as I've aged these years, there's been times when my weight has crept up due to different issues going on in my life. Sometimes maybe I just got lazy and was slacking off on the exercise, or sometimes I just wasn't watching and paying attention to as much of being careful with what I was eating, or sometimes it would be a health issue. But I did especially begin to notice it when I entered my 40s. So I added distance and frequency and speed to my jogging and running, and then I would also continue to do aerobics. And then with my children at that time, they would ride bicycles with me, or they would run with me because we encouraged them to run. In fact, we would encourage them to do it, and Carl would have them, every mile you run, you earn $1 to get a new pair of running shoes, stuff like that. Sometimes they share those stories. And in fact, Grace Ann and I have recorded a podcast that will drop after this one, and we talk about some of those kinds of things. But during that time, I just decided that I want to keep jogging or doing whatever I can as long as God has given me a body with which to do it. And I still love to run. I should say jog, but I still love to do it. I like to get my heart to its target heart rate and keep it there for 10 to 15 minutes, but keep going. I don't only run 10 to 15 minutes, but at least where my target heart rate is up. And I've learned over the years that it's such a good time to clear my mind. I don't know. I kind of like the way the sweat feels, because I know I always think of it as like getting toxins out of my body. And I do like the feel of salty skin and sticky hair when appropriate, obviously. I've even enjoyed over the years running in the rain. Because I don't know, I've just become accustomed to hearing the thud of my feet on the ground, just things like that. It's like a perspective. I don't know, and running's cheap. All you need is whatever kind of shoes you want to wear. And of course, I am a minimalist when it comes to shoes, so I run in very thin shoes because I'd run barefoot if it wouldn't hurt my feet. But so I do that, and I don't know. I know people have invested in treadmills. Obviously, those can be really good. Or a Echo bike, which we have one of those now. Anyway, so I know that a lot of people, they buy those pieces of equipment and then they don't use them. They just put it together. They look at it, admire it, turn it on, dust it or whatever, and then they finally sell it. But if you use it, it will do its job. And of course, if you're like walking and jogging, those kinds of things, they're always flexible, even with the changing dynamic of a family. Because like I said earlier, my kids would bicycle with me, but you can do that or your children bicycle next to you. I think about my daughter who runs with her daughter. And of course you can run laps in your yard while your children are playing in the yard. Obviously you can go to a park where there's like a trail around it and push your baby in that and the kids can play. You can do races with your children. So there's all kinds of things that will happen that you can do with your family. It doesn't always have to be about, I got to get out and do it by myself. You just get your heart rate up so that it's a true workout and sustain it for, 15, 20 minutes. But if this is new to you, just start with 2 minutes, start with 3 minutes, just do what you can. Do a walk run. And again, that's just to get the heart pumping, regularly. And you can set goals for yourself, there's all kinds of things that you can do. And there's other little tips, that we could talk about, like, parking in the further spot from the store that you're going into. I mean, that's just such a simple thing, but, and I guess if you're pushed for time, and we're not talking about that, or if it's raining, I'm not talking about that, but just on a normal day, I can get some steps in, because that's what everybody talks about now, getting my steps in. In fact, we do that. My husband and I do that. How many steps you get today? How many steps you get today? Because we want to always keep moving if we can. So there's that. And obviously those closer spots ought to be there, for the mom who's juggling 3 kids trying to get into the store, or for, someone who's truly disabled and needs to walk with a cane, because there are people who need to be able to park closer to the store. But for those of us who don't need that, it's so much better to park further away. It's good for the people that you're leaving those spots for, and it's also good for you. And another thing that's just a simple tip is just take the stairs. Just take the stairs. When you're staying in a hotel, just take the stairs. I mean, Carl and I were at a conference not too long ago, and we were on the 10th floor, and we just took the stairs every single time. We just did it, and we just did it. And the interesting thing is you never see anybody on the stairs, and if you do, it scares you because you never see anybody on the stairs. But it's just, another way to make this body function the way it ought to function. And sometimes we found that we would get where we needed to go quicker than the people on the elevator, because they're having to stop at every floor and everybody's at the conference and they're waiting forever for the elevators. Like, just take the stairs if you can. So there's that. Anyway, and then along with that, there was a time, I'll get to that. I'll share that a little bit towards the end of the podcast. But let's just talk about food for a second. And again, I'm just sharing my story. Sometimes it's helpful just to share things that have worked for a person. And pretty much I've always eaten what I've wanted to eat. I just keep a watch over my habits and my patterns, and it's always about choices that you make. Yeah, I love fried chicken. I really do. And I love all the fast food fried chicken. I love Chick-fil-A. I like Zaxby's. I like Bojangles. I like Kentucky Fried. In fact, my son Grant there was a time when he would always, if Carl and I were somewhere where we're eating fried chicken, we knew that we were going to get a call from him, and he'd say, you're eating fried chicken. We're like, yes, we're eating fried chicken, but we don't eat it every day. We just always happen to be eating it when you call us. But it's fine now and then. You just don't eat it all the time. And of course, it's always better to get grilled chicken, and I get that too. But sometimes the Southern girl in me just wants a good piece of fried chicken. But I watch that. I watch the amount of fried foods that I eat, in terms of, you take a step back, and you look at the whole week, or you look at the whole day in terms of what you've consumed. You don't get legalistic about it, but you pay attention. And of course, everyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love ice cream. I just do. But I'm a very picky ice cream eater, because I like certain kinds. I won't eat ice cream just because it says it's ice cream. I'm very picky about what kind. But if I buy it, the kinds that I like, I don't buy it to look at it in my freezer. I buy it to eat it. So for me, it's like, if I bring it home, I'm going to I'm going to eat it. So, but again, that's just something in the overall scheme of things. It's fine to eat ice cream. But you don't eat them every day. You don't just eat a whole half gallon. You don't do that kind of thing. And of course, again, it's common sense, because if we're overweight, if I'm overweight, then I know that I have to eat less. The calorie intake needs to be lower than the amount of activity I'm doing. I have to exercise more and eat less, because that gives like the calorie deficit, and that in turn helps you lose weight. So there's no tricks to it. There's no gimmicks to it. There's no fads to it. You just eat a balanced, healthy diet. And, and I go through phases, and I have done this my whole life. Like, I've gone through phases where I would eat oatmeal and raisins every single morning because of the fiber, because of some of the protein that's in the oatmeal. And then raisins have potassium in them. And I think, well, that's good. And sometimes I would throw an egg in there. Then, I was on a habit of eating a lot of kale, and I still will eat it, but I don't eat it the way I did. I got in a habit of it. I was in a habit where I was eating broccoli all the time because I read how good it was for you. It would I'd either eat it raw, which I do not like it raw, but I would eat it that way, a little bit softened in a broccoli salad, or just steamed or whatever. In fact, during that time frame when I was eating broccoli so much, my kids would tease me about it. And even to this day, I'll still get pictures of when one of my sons, Jordan, when he's having broccoli, he'll send me a photo, and I'll say every day, or he'll say every day. So there's that. But anyway, it's once again, just to maintain a healthy weight, calories consumed must be the same as calories expended. To gain weight, if you need to gain weight, and some girls, they've starved themselves so much they need to gain weight. They don't think they do, but they do, to be healthy. But the calories consumed must be more than the calories expended. And of course, like I said, to lose weight, you have to, the calories consumed have to be less than the calories expended. So those are just common sense things. They're just reminders that we all need. And even as I'm walking through them on this podcast, I need this reminder. Now, for a lot of you, your moms with young children who listen to this podcast, here's some things that helped me when I had young children, and I've already named a few of them as I've been trying to encourage you with this. But sometimes you could just work with another mom friend, or a neighbor to watch your children. Say, hey, I would love to go for a 30-minute run. Could you watch my children for that 30 minutes? Also, you could invest in a really good jogging stroller. I will be forever grateful. When we moved to Beaufort, and we moved here in 1990, Carl became the pastor of the church in 1990. And then in 1993, I had my fifth child, Jameson, here. And that was it back in the day, because that was 1993. And that was back in the day where there weren't all these fancy jogging strollers like they are now, but they were beginning to have them. But they gave me at my baby shower a jogging stroller, and it meant so much to me. I still think about it, and I logged so many miles with that thing, with him in the stroller, with my other children with me. We would run together. I mean, there was so much joy, so much fun with that jogging stroller. But invest in one of those. Sometimes you have to say, okay, this is important to me, so I'm going to make a little slush fund over here to fund something that's really important to me. So if that would help you, do it. And of course, play fun music in your home. Now it's so easy to do that with Alexa and other things, just to have music playing and jog in place with the kids, dance in the living room with your children. Children love that kind of stuff. And like I said earlier, even a tiny baby loves to see mama jump around in front of him. It's just so fun. You can, and again, back in the day, I would tell moms, I just bought an aerobic DVD. But you don't have to buy the aerobic DVD anymore. You can just look it up on YouTube and learn the steps and do it. Or just do you can do fun line dancing with your children. Just all kinds of things, because the whole point is to get the body moving, to have using your muscles. If you've got young children, you can just wait till your husband gets home and say, hey, I want to go for 20, 30 minutes. Would you let me do that before we eat dinner or whatever. And again, I already said, get outside and play with your children. Just get out there and play with them. Run up and down whatever kind of yard you have. Take them to the pool and go swimming with them. Do relay races with them. Do egg and spoon races. Do the old-fashioned games like we did when I was a child, like Red Rover, Kick the Cans, and 1, 2, 3 Red Light, and all those kinds of things. Bike rides again. And then, if you have a little one, make an investment in a baby seat to be on the back of the bicycle so you can take the baby with you when you go. And it is true, y'all. Little children love to be active. They do. Use it to your advantage instead of always trying to get them to calm down and be quiet and color, which all of that is good. There's a time and a place for that, but they're not going to want to sit down and be calm and color if they haven't gotten enough exercise. You want to go outside and tire them out. Y'all all know what it's like you want your baby to take a good nap in the afternoon. Oh, I got to get them worn out, and it's good for them. I was just with my little granddaughter, Mary Frances, and, she's walking now and she's still toddling around and she'll fall and stuff, but she loved to hold my fingers, and we would walk with her holding my fingers and she would lead me. And yeah, after a while, it's like, okay, I'd like to sit down, but she wants to keep moving, so I'm going to keep moving. And then other times she would just hold one of my fingers, and I thought, this is good for me to do it as much as it's good for her. It's so good for her. But yeah, so there's that, and you want them. It's so good for them. It's good for them to be outdoors. It's good for them to be in the sunshine. It's good for them to play and not to always be looking at screens. And then there can be a time to watch the movie after everyone's tired. But anyway, and then you take lots of walks together, because there's a benefit to doing that too, because your children will talk to you. Sometimes they'll run ahead a little bit or whatever, but they'll talk to you about so many things. They'll ask you questions. The scripture tells us in Joshua chapter 4, I love that passage of scripture, because it's when they're placing the memorial stones at the Jordan River, and then Joshua says, when your children ask, tell them. You tell them what this means. And I can think of so many times when I was on walks with my children when they asked me questions that they might not have asked otherwise. I remember one in particular when Jameson was up on his dad's shoulders and we were walking and all of our children were with us. But he asked, how do stars stay in the sky? Does God glue them? Because he was looking up at the stars, because it was in the evening when we took that walk. I can think of so many other times with Grace Anna when it was just the two of us and we were praying about things, or she was asking me things about the Lord. Same with Jeremy, same with Jordan, same with Grant. And because you're not only spending time with your children, you're getting the exercise that you need and that they need, and you're spending quality time with them, and they ask you things, and you're able to talk about so many things that the Lord brings to their minds, and you're able to answer them and tell them. Or sometimes you say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I want to find out, and I'm so glad you asked me, because I want to know. And that's just such a great question. And y'all, it's so easy to take our health and our bodies for granted when we're young. It is. And, it's too bad that the health benefits of keeping our bodies healthy aren't so obvious until we age. It's like then we see, oh, I should have been taking better care of myself. I should have been eating better. I shouldn't have been smoking. I shouldn't have been drinking. I shouldn't have been whatever it is, fill in the blank that you need to fill in. And of course, the question always should be not, can I live longer? I think I said that in both times in the previous podcast, because that's not the issue. Because as we know from Scripture, our days are ordained by God, when yet there was not one of them. So He knows the boundaries of our inhabitation. He knows how long we're going to be here for our stay upon this earth, but it should be, can I live better? You know, can I live according to the ability that God has given me? Whatever He's given me, can I make the most of it? I want to take care of this body because I am a steward. Quality of life is so important. You know, Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that they might have life and might have it abundantly. You know, sometimes, as I've mentioned in the last 2 podcasts, God will allow something to come into our life that maybe steals our health, you know, that, or we have chronic pain, or we have some kind of ongoing illness. I think about my cousin, Karen. She's already gone home to be with the Lord, but she had Raynaud's disease, but she did her best to take care of her body the best she could with the body that God had given her. And one of the things that I always admired about her is she never complained about it. I mean, sometimes she would talk about that it was hard, but she was trusting God with it, and she knew that it was her portion. And I so admired her for that. And she did the best she could with the health that she had been given until the Lord took her home. And of course, now we know she is healed completely. But she didn't bury her health in the ground. She did the best she could as long as she could. And you know, and this is what I want to share as I kind of wind this podcast down. And you've heard me mention, those of you who follow me or whatever, that you know that I started weight training back in 2019, and it wasn't my decision. I mean, it was my decision, but it was only because my son just kept after me for it. You know, I was 61 when I started, and it was because he just kept hammering it to me that, you know, your muscles atrophy, you're not, you know, you're getting older, everybody's muscles, that happens, your strength fades. He would always say, Mom, I know that you've run your whole life, and he would say, you're weak. That's what he would say. And he said, and this will help you, because he would say too, that he knew I wanted to stay invested in my children and grandchildren's lives. He knew that. So I sent him, after my mom died, she passed away at the end of 2023, in December 27th. And sometime after that, I sent him a text because I was thinking about how he had helped me in this area. And this is what I said. I said, strength comes in all forms, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Grant, I am thankful to God for grabbing my heart back in the 70s and helping me learn how important it was to build my spiritual muscles. Life is hard, and when all is said and done, spiritual strength is the core of getting you through life, and not only getting you through it, but enjoying it along the way. The emotional strength, that too. I think my mother helped me with that the most as I was growing up, telling me things like, sometimes you just have to keep going even if you don't feel like it, and you have to do the job whether you want to or not, and some things are worth crying over, but this isn't one of them, so stop crying. Things like that. And then there's physical strength. Early in my college days, I wanted to be intentional in taking care of my physical health, so I joined in the craze of running and aerobics, and I worked hard at it, even majoring in health education. But I never saw the importance of resistance training with weights and a barbell. That didn't happen until I was 61 years old, and it was you who kept telling me that though I was, quote, fit, I was weak. Insulting, but true. So you started me on a journey of getting under a barbell. I had no idea how much this was going to help me in the final 2 years of my mother's life. In 2019, the same year I began weightlifting, she was diagnosed with white matter disease. And then in typical Frances McKay fashion, she looked it up, her disease, and she knew what was coming. After all, she was a retired registered nurse, and so she began preparing herself and her children for what was to come. I think we children were somewhat in denial, at least I was, because she had always been so strong. But nonetheless, it strikes me that her mental decline and my getting strong began at the same time. Then she had her brain bleed in January of 2022 that sent her on a downward spiral. Those first days were so tough as she was in the hospital, and you were such a source of strength for me. You came and you stayed with me at the farm, and you even got me in the gym when I certainly did not feel like it. Mama was then moved to an intense rehab facility and then to Bethea Baptist retirement home where she had always wanted to live if she could no longer live at home. We realized at some point that there was no way she could live at her home again, but she had even made those arrangements financially. It's not that she did not love us, her children, but she had expressed that she did not want us to care for her in that way. She just wanted us to spend time with her. So, the last 2 years of her life, with her memory fading, she was still so much fun. She was confused, yes, but she laughed a lot, and we saw her all the time, took her places, and told her stories, and basically enjoyed life with her. Then, in the last 2 months before she died, her physical body, which had always been so strong and robust, took a huge turn. As you know, she lost her ability to walk as her brain could not send the signals anymore. She became wheelchair bound, and I quickly learned that I was strong enough to literally deadlift her from her recliner to her bed and to her wheelchair, to the car, and to wherever it was that I wanted to take her. She still enjoyed life in her limited capacity, and I wanted to enjoy life with her till the very end. And I did. God is so very kind. And now she is rejoicing with her Savior. Grant, in some ways, these past 2 years have been the hardest of my life, but I have seen God work. He kept giving me the physical strength, the emotional strength, and most of all, the spiritual strength to walk through them. And though my heart is still grieving, I am strong because God is strong. And I know that as time goes on, the weight of the grief won't feel so heavy. The stress of it will make me stronger. I will adapt, and I will be better for it by the grace of God. And I thank you for your part in this. I love you, Mom. Now, it hit me so hard because, when I was a young woman, I wanted to, I wanted to be fit. I wanted to look good. I wanted, to look good in clothes. It was more focused on myself. But it's like God changes your perspective. Obviously, the more you grow in your relationship with Him, your perspective changes anyway. Because sanctification is a process and you learn more and more of who God is and why He has you here. And in this area of food and physical fitness and taking care of our bodies, even at my age now, and seeing how God granted me at this stage of my life to be able to physically have the strength to do the things that I needed to do for my mother means everything to me. Now, I would be doing just as much if the Lord had taken my health and I was still investing in my mother. He would have showed me all kinds of other ways to do it. But I could do this. I could work hard at it. I just could do it. And I don't know, it's another thing of just having the energy to be with my children and to, I don't know. I know that as I continue to age, the body's going to wear out. I understand all of that. I understand what the scripture says about aging and about our bodies are tense and we groan. But until the Lord does something to take it away, I want to stay as physically fit as I can be at my stage of life, at my age, and to take care of this fully functioning body at this point in my life. And I'm so grateful for so many examples that I've had all these years of, friends of mine who have suffered greatly with the physical limitations that they have in this life, yet they're still glorifying God in their bodies and being good stewards of what God has entrusted to them. So I hope these podcasts have been helpful to you. We're not done because I have a conversation with Grace Anna coming up. I'll have a conversation with Maureen coming up, and Anyway, Father, I thank you for our time today with this podcast. I pray you use it for your glory. And Father, I pray you continue to teach us all that we need to know about the body. We know that you have said in your word, you tell us, you say, for this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Father, I'm so grateful for your word. I'm thankful for the way you keep sanctifying each one of us as we walk with you. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you enjoyed this episode of Rare But Real, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when a new episode is posted. And share this podcast with friends. Follow Audrey on Instagram and Facebook at Mothering from the Heart. And listen to all her messages on the Search the Scriptures app.